Hi everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to be talking to you more about our style guide, which you can see here in front of me on the screen. You might recognize this brand as well, which is Monobrand, which is our internal in-house brand that we use for demo purposes. And if I wanted to start from scratch, which is something I'm not going to do today because I have it here, but you would basically just generate a new guideline on your top right corner and then start populating that guideline. If I click on this guideline, which I have in front of me, you see that I've spent a bit of time adding some content. You can see as well that this entry page, as we call it, which is our cover page, has got some links which I've added, and it's basically the page that all your users are going to see first thing once you start inviting them to the platform. And at the top here, I've got the different modules that I'm going to show you quickly today, but I'm going to really focus today on the style guide element. And here at the top on the right, I've also got the option to always jump back to this cover page or to another page, depending on what you've set as a default, so that whoever's using your platform can always get back to the entry gates, if you like, to avoid any unnecessary dead ends. Now, if I click on the style guide option here, and I'm going to come back to this cover page after, but if I click on this style guide, you see that here on the right, I've got what I call a power bar, which, traditional SaaS functionality. But here at Frontify, we know that we want it to be as easily or as intuitive and straightforward to use as possible. And that's why the first thing you might have noticed is you can jump from view mode, which I'm currently in now. I can jump into edit mode and start populating my pages. So you see here that I've obviously spent some time and I've added some sections and some pages. If I wanted to add new pages, so for example under the intro here, I could add a page here and call this test. If I press enter, I can then start adding my so-called content blocks or Legos to this page, and you can really mix and match it to tailor it to your specific requirements, and make sure that it's going to be working for you, your organization, and your brand as a whole. So in this test section here, I'm not going to add anything because I'd like to show you in more detail how it would look within the different sections here, which I've already added. So, obviously in any guideline, you would get, a logo section, a section which reflects your colors, a section which reflects your icons, your grids, your typographies, etc. If I click on this section here called brand, you can see that if I jump into view mode again, or just Command E on my keyboard, or Control E if you're using a PC, you can then really kind of take a look at the different elements which have been added. And if something's missing, like here for example in this logo section, I'd like to add a new logo, I'm just going to do a Command E, jump into edit mode. So this inline editing makes it really quick, really easy, and really straightforward, and it prevents you from having to involve your IT every time you try and customize something, every time you try and add some content, but it's really quick and it takes literally a few seconds. So now I'm just going to select one element here, which is my image block, and you see I've got two options. I could go and fetch it in my Finder, which is something I'm gonna do now. If you hosted your logos in your media library or logo library, which would be in your backend, you could just go and fetch it and basically link it back to the front end, something which I'm not going to do now because I don't have anything linked in my backend, but I'm just going to select my Monobrand. I've got in my Finder, I created a page here, and if you wanted to add your logo pin, this one here, which is outlined, which is currently a PNG file, you can upload it to your page. You can then go on to this cog here, which is kind of the setting feature. First thing I always do is increase the resolution as it's a PNG to make it look a bit sharper, and maybe to align it with the other logo here. I'm just going to click on this figure here. You see you've got some other options. You could add some borders. You can really customize the background colors. You can also define if it should be downloadable or not. Usually as a default, it's always going to be downloadable because it's a style guide that you want people to be able to use, but we have obviously some use cases where the style guide is just for information only, and nothing's going to be downloadable. again, that depends on on who you're sharing it with and how you want your style guide to be working. So once you've added your logo, I've clicked on the wrong part here. I could then obviously make it reflect the other sections. So say I'd like to add maybe a header. There you go, and then I'll call this logo test, for example. And there you go, I've added a section logo, and if I wanted to download it, I could download it here. The other, I'd say, important element to your style guide is, it's not just a question of having PNGs available or JPEGs, but depending on how extensive or who you're sharing your, who you're working with, you might want to add your other formats, your, vectorized graphics, your AI files, you name it, of that specific format. So you can just add them here as attachments on the right, and then make them ready available for download for all your users. Alternatively, you could also just upload a zip file or a package, and then you can just download that package and all your formats available. So, as I said, it's very quick, it's very easy. If I click on the color sections here, you can see that I've already added a lot of elements, and you might be wondering, okay, but is this all kind of automated? How does that work? So if I wanted to add some new colors to my style guide, I would just click on the edit mode. And if I wanted to now just, let's say that here we have some main colors, we've got some additional colors, but maybe I would like to add a section which I'd like to call secondary colors, for example. I'm just going to name it secondary colors. And you can see that here I can really start adding my color codes. If you have some hex code ready or some RGB code, you can just upload the ones you have. But here in this example, I don't actually have anything available, and I'm just going to think outside the box for a few seconds here. And let's say I'm going to pick this shade here, which is red violet. Obviously, you could change this and you could call it mono brand pink, for example. And then you could also add the second shade, which might be a bit more orangey. There you go. And I'm going to call this mono brand orange. So as you see, it's very, very quick and very, very straightforward. And if you're working with other color code, which is obviously going to be the case for most of you here, you can also upload your, obviously for these codes I wouldn't know it, you can change it into a list view, which looks a bit nicer, or a card view, which again looks a bit more formal. And then you can start working with Pantone, with RAL, with CMYK coated, for example. You can upload those color codes here manually within the settings. So from a colors perspective, I think the colors have got to be easily found. People have got to make sure that they're consistent with all the colors, and if you're managing this centrally here within the style guide, you have the guarantee that all your users are using the latest colors, and there's not going to be any inconsistencies in the different channels, digital channels that you guys are managing. The other thing you can add to facilitate the whole user process. Sorry, my words are not coming out. But basically, you could also add a color swatch here, which is download this color swatch, upload it back into Photoshop, InDesign, and all those colors that you've uploaded here into your guidelines are going to be available for use without having to do it manually, saving a lot of time and obviously a lot of preventing any mistakes from happening. Now, from a typography perspective, now you might have seen before that there are over 40 content blocks here within this guideline, and if I wanted to show you all of them, I'd probably need 2 hours of tutorial video, which would probably bore you to death, and that's something I'm going to avoid. But just the last one maybe I wanted to show you is this typography element here. You can see that we've already added some Montserrats as a font to the guideline, which is very, very extensive here, and you've got some Playfair display, which again is a font available. If you wanted to add some new fonts, you would go into your typography content block, click on this block here, and you see you've got your Google, your Typekit, your Fontdex, your system fonts available. And in this particular example here, for today's tutorial, I'm also going to upload a self-hosted or a licensed font, if you like, which is, a lot of our enterprise clients have obviously licensed fonts. And if you wanted to upload it to your platform, I'd just have to select it into my style guide element here. I'm just going to upload this accurate Frontify here, open it into the platform. There you go, this is accurate. Oh, I've got to go back to it. There you go here, and if you wanted to start customizing it and say, you know, the bold version here is not really encouraging people to use it, you could take it out of your guidelines. But there you go, it's now uploaded, and if you wanted to customize your monobrand style guide into that specific font, that's something that you can now do by just clicking on the design, and in your general design settings you can see that here currently the main font is Lato. If you wanted to change that now to Accurate Light, for example, you could do it, and you've noticed that it's now changed everywhere within your guideline. I'm not saying it looks nicer, but it's definitely something that you can do, and you can customize on a granular level as well. In terms of, you know, larger big picture, the other thing that you would then obviously start doing once you've uploaded all your content, you can then link all your different sections, and I'm actually going to change it back to Lato because I do think it does look nicer. So just bear with me 1 second. There you go, how it was at the start. And you can see that at the top here, I've also linked a UI library section, which is more for, you know, developers and basically stores or hosts all your code, which could either be uploaded manually in the platform, or using our API, you could just sync it from your external Git repositories. And also finally, I've got a media library here, which I've linked to the guideline. This is our, you know, we call it the media library, but it's basically our DAM solution, our digital asset management solution, where, you know, the complete functionality of a DAM is available, but it can just be then uploaded or linked with your larger style guide, so that once you start sharing your platform with more and more users, each individual has access to the right information. And, you know, if I wanted to link some more libraries here, you can see that at the top, jumping again into edit mode, and I can start linking my different libraries as well as you go along. And if you're wondering, okay, but where is it linking it to, or where is it linking it from? If you go back one step into your brand again, coming back to the first slide or section I showed you before, you can see that beside the guidelines, you've also got your projects, which is more reflecting the workspace elements that we talk about here at Frontify, which is our collaboration tool. We've also got a publisher element, which is for templating, for, you know, for print, which uses an InDesign integration, or for web applications. And finally, we've got our library sections here, and we have that media library that I showed you before on the guideline, which we just linked from the back end. And this is where you're adding your tags, your metadata, your lifecycle. This is where you can, you know, downsize your pictures if you wanted to, add some watermarks. I mean, you know, the functionality goes on, build your collections, etc., etc. This, by the way, this media library section is going to be a separate tutorial, which is going to be available as well on our website. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I'm going to come back to the guideline section, and I am now going to kind of wrap it up. And again, feel free to write to us if you have any specific questions relating to any of the functionalities. But basically, all the elements that we have in the back end, the media library, the UI library, the style guide, are centralized in one area, which is your Frontify platform. They consolidate all information. It's a working document. And if you want to then start inviting people to that document, you can obviously just add the people here on the right. So, for example, if I'm going to invite my colleague Gabriela, for example, at frontify.com, I could then say I'd like Gabriela to be an editor. We obviously have a different roles as well. We have a viewer role, which is your traditional user who's going to be, you know, consuming the information, downloading all the assets, but not going to be, you know, tailoring or changing anything within the platform. And you've got the owner, which is as well an editor, but also kind of the administrator of the platform as well. And if you wanted to have multiple owners, per guideline, again, that's not a problem. It depends on your use case. So, and if you're working with freelancers, I could also say that Gabriela is going to be, you know, should have access to the platform until the end of May, for example. you could invite that person and it's all set in the system directly. You could also invite groups of people if you wanted to, and obviously for larger clients we also have single sign-on option, which means that your active directory is basically what gives people access, and it's Frontify then reflects that active directory that you guys are managing. So that would be the third option if you want to kind of bulk up or speed up that process, user management process. Finally, there is another option which we have here, which is targets. So you're wondering, this is a working document and a lot of people are going to be invited to it, but maybe not every person should be seeing the same things. Maybe some external users, maybe some external agencies should not have access, as an example, to the media library, for example. So what you can do is you can build so-called target groups. Basically what you can do, I could create a new group here, call it external agency ABC, for example. So you see that this is our test environment, so we do have a lot of target groups created already. I'm not going to do it, but you could call it external agency ABC. And if now you go back to your platform and you jump into edit mode, you can really define the areas that should be visible for that specific target group. And if the media library should definitely not be public, it should not be company-wide, it should be for marketing, it should be for the board members, it shouldn't be for external journalists, etc., etc. You can define that usage as you go along, basically. And finally, you've got the different options of analytics, which here hasn't been activated on my demo environment, but telling you exactly how well your guideline's performing or not performing. And obviously you can also create public links if you wanted to open up your guideline for more users, and then you could also activate this terms and conditions so that if people do view your guideline as a public link, they still have to kind of accept your terms and conditions. And this is pretty much it from my end. This is kind of a first tutorial about the guidelines. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks a lot for listening, and stay in touch.